Hey everyone, we need to talk about posture because it's a very, very prevalent concern. A lot of people want to improve their posture, so we need to properly define it so that first of all, and a lot of people are also offering solutions to improving posture. So we need to talk about the fundamentals of posture, how posture emerges, what posture actually means. Then we need to talk about whether a posture correction is even warranted or not. In your case, do you even need to worry about it or not? And if you do need to worry about it, then what is the scope of a fitness training practitioner, of a fitness coach, right? In what sense can a fitness coach actually help you? Or if you are a fitness coach, then what is your scope of the solution that you can provide somebody in terms of improving their posture? So pretty much everything that we do, it's basically a model of perception and action, right? We have a mind and a body. There's a barrier, which is our body. Then there are things that are outside of the body, and then there are things that are inside of the body. So if we call ourselves as a system, there are things that are happening inside the system, then there's everything else outside the system, right? So outside the system being the system's immediate environment, being your immediate environment. Couple of things about the environment. Environment is very uncertain because we exist in time and space. Time is constantly moving forward and we exist in space. There are so many entities and so many characters and objects in the space which the movement of which is very uncertain, right? You never know what is going to emerge in your environment next for the most part, and what kind of a stimulus it's going to have on you and how you are going to respond to it, or how you might have to respond to it. Similarly, the uncertainty of time also cannot be denied. As time moves forward, things might seem constant within the moment, or change is the only constant, however you want to look at it. So, and that's very true. As time moves forward, things change. Things are very uncertain. So even if things seem very certain within this moment of time, they could always change in the next moment or in the near future. So anyway, and we are subject to this uncertainty and this unpredictability of time and space. That's just the nature of reality. So we exist as a system, we exist in environments that are very uncertain and very unpredictable. As systems, we are also constantly perceiving this environment, and based on our perception of this environment, our behavior is being modeled, right? We perceive something, we act upon that perception, right? Based on that perception. And when this happens for a number of times, when we keep perceiving, when we keep acting, and let's say we are exposed to a certain kind of environment or a certain kind of repetitive stimuli from our environment, there are behaviors and characteristics and adaptations that emerge in the body, in the neurology and the physiology, in the brain, in the mind, and in the body itself, right? And your posture happens to be one of those emergent outcomes. Such an emergent outcome is very complex. Training is a very good example of it, right? What is training and why do we train? We train so that something changes in our body. And what does that change signify? That change is basically an emergent outcome, an outcome of repetitive actions, right? You do something again and again and again and again and again, and things change. And as things change, some kind of a behavior and some kind of an outcome in your physiology emerges, right? An adaptation that you're desiring. All different kinds of things that happen in the body, right? These things that define who we are, our behaviors, our postures, the adaptations that are, our weight, our body composition. These are all emergent outcomes of this perception action coupling that happens, right? This coordination between the environment and the person itself, and how they perceive things and how they act upon it. When we talk about posture is a very complex thing, because when you think about it, just the sheer amount of things that you must have perceived, right, that led to the emergence of whatever posture that you have is just too much. You've been around for quite a while, right? You start perceiving things as soon as you're born. You're perceiving all kinds of things within your environment, such as the other people around you, your parents, how their postures are, their emotions, their behavior, which has led to the emergence of your posture as an outcome of this. So it's safe to say that posture is a very complex issue. a lot of times what happens is, this is like a very common dialogue that people will have. People will say, okay, I have bad posture. Then somebody might suggest a solution to them that, okay, if you have a bad posture, it depends on what kind of a bad posture do you have. Do you feel like you're slouching forward? Maybe you have weak back muscles. So if you strengthen your back, your posture is going to improve. Right, so we need to understand that weak back muscles, weak erector muscles in the spine could be one of the reasons that have led to the emergence of your posture, but it cannot be the only reason, right? It cannot be the only reason that leads to bad posture. As we have already discussed, the emergence of your posture depends on a lot. Your environment shapes these things. So like I said, the behavior of the people around you, right? The behavior of your parents, the emotions of the people around you, how you perceive them, how you act upon them. Simple things as how you kind of lead your day-to-day life. Have you been, accustomed to kind of staring at screens for a really long time, or reading books for, throughout your life? Have you been in a bent posture throughout, and is that just how your body has kind of adapted to it? So there are all these different things. I'm just giving you guys a few examples, right? So when an adaptation such as a posture occurs, it is basically an example of an outcome that your body has self-organized, right? Your body has organized this outcome, this posture, based on pretty much countless different stimuli in your environment, going through not just in your environment within this instance of time, but going through multiple instances of time for as long as you have been around. There is a conversation to be had about whether just simply strengthening the back muscles is going to help you improve your posture or not. Because if your posture is an emergent outcome of just who you have been as a person and the totality of your life experiences, then can we simply reduce it down to saying that, okay, you have weak back muscles and improving the strength of your back muscles is going to improve your posture? So if we are saying that, we are saying that the only thing constraining or shaping up or organizing a posture is the strength of certain muscles, right? We're reducing it down to that. But when you understand the fundamentals of, the complexity of what it means to be a human being in living in uncertain time and space, you understand that weak back muscles cannot possibly be the only thing constraining or shaping up or organizing posture as it is. Long story short, to sum it up, posture is a complex emergent outcome which is constrained by countless different stimuli that your body perceives and acts upon. And as a result of that perception action modeling, this is a behavior, this is an adaptation that emerges. So of that emergent outcome, one of the many factors influencing that outcome could be weak back musculature, but it's not the only one. Now let's talk about in what cases is postural, because I'm not making a case for absolutely, I'm not making an absolute case against postural rehabilitation, right? Which is basically the rehabilitation of a bad posture. Bad postures do exist, so we need to basically define what bad postures are. Because overall, vaguely, bad postures are defined as anything that is basically not upright, right? So we are basically saying that anybody that does not have an upright posture, or that is slouching forward, or has, a hunched back, anteriorly tilted hips and all that, that's bad posture, and we need to basically rehabilitate all of that and restore the baseline posture, which is hips that are tucked in, back that is straight and all that. And we do that by strengthening the back muscles and the glute muscles and the core muscles and whatnot, right? So we get into those kinds of vague conclusions about posture that are just based on so many assumptions that we do not even think about if they are principally correct or not. So I'm not saying that posture, the talk about posture rehabilitation should not be done at all. There is definitely a case for postural rehabilitation, and these cases are again going to depend on first principles, right? You do not want to try and fix a problem that does not even exist. Do not try to fix what is not broken. So a case for postural rehabilitation can be made when a posture becomes an issue for you. What is the body ultimately? It's the skeletons, right? It's the bones that have rotated in certain, they want to hold a certain posture, they want to hold a certain position with reference to gravity, because that's like the only force that is acting on us at any given point of time, which is gravity, right? So your body likes to do that. So After taking into fact all of your life experiences, your body has somehow deemed this posture fit as like the path of least resistance. That okay, this is the path of least resistance. This is what allows us to conserve the most amount of energy, taking into account our environmental constraints, taking into account everything else, right? This is the body. This is what the body has deemed fit. And we have to understand that the body and the neurology, the physiology, these are inherently smart systems. Right? They always take the path of least resistance. They want to conserve energy. They want to abide by the law of conservation of energy. For your skeleton to be oriented in time and space, what are the soft tissues that constrain the movement of the skeleton? It's your muscles, right? Your skeleton I can only move my hands if my muscles, because my muscles are moving the skeleton in time and space. Usually what tends to happen is seldom do we see people that are completely like in a neutral posture. Depending on their environmental constraints and depending on how their body has self-organized their posture, certain joints in their body will be somewhere on the spectrum of this range of motion, right? So your hips may not be completely anteriorly tilted. When you are at rest, they might not be completely posteriorly tilted, and they are probably not in neutral. They are somewhere in the middle. Maybe you are a little bit anteriorly tilted, maybe you are a little bit protracted, maybe you are a little bit more retracted, maybe you are a little bit more posteriorly tilted in your hips, right? Maybe one of your legs is a bit more externally rotated, maybe one of your legs is a bit more internally rotated. Even things like flat feet, what we consider as flat feet, is basically your skeleton that has self-organized itself in a way that your arch flattens out quite a lot, right? That little bone right underneath the heel, if that bone is organized in a way where it is not quite straight but tilted, not quite posteriorly tilted but anteriorly tilted, you are going to have a much more flatter arch. A lot of people that have very stiff arches have this right bone underneath the heel that is much more posteriorly tilted, and they have very stiff arches, right? Some people have their shins rotated inside, some people have their shins rotated outside. So, and your body, we are talking about isolated segments of the body. Then you have like the totality of the body, which is a complex emergent outcome of all of these parts, all of these segments of the body being somewhere in that spectrum of the range of motion, right? Things are neither here nor there, they're just somewhere. Now this really is not an issue until you have the ability to move out of this. So if this is the baseline, if this is the center and this is one end of the range of motion, this is the other end of the range of motion, let's say at rest you are self-organized at right here somewhere, maybe you're not at the neutral, maybe you're deviated a little bit towards this end of the range of motion or deviated towards a little bit that end of the range of motion. The problem really arises, and a case for postural rehabilitation can be made when you cannot move out of where you are at rest. That is when you can really say that you're stuck there. Right? If you're not stuck there, if you're able to move out of it, then it is completely fine. Then you can, and it is absolutely fine to have any kind of a posture at rest, right? If you can move out of it. But when you cannot move out of it, then you start building a process of postural rehabilitation where again it's going to be based on first principles, where you decide, okay, now what is the simplest thing that I can do to create a change of phase state in the system, right? How can I start bringing the system back to neutral so that it can start moving freely towards both end of the range of motion, right? What do we mean by being stuck in one end of the range of motion? Let's say at rest your body is deviated at a certain end, right? At rest your hips are anteriorly tilted, or at rest you have a protracted bag or something like that. We do all kinds of different activities in life, right? And all these different activities require your body to be able to hit these points in the entire range of motion. But if you're not able to move out of one point of the range of motion and go into the point in the range of motion that is required for that specific activity, you're going to do that activity anyway, right? It's not that you inherently know that this is where my posture is stuck, so this activity or this range of activities will be unavailable to me, so I'm not going to do that. You do those activities anyway. So what ends up happening is that your body ends up compensating for it through some other way, because it know that, like, let's say to do a certain kind of activity your hips need to posteriorly tilt, right? Or one of your hip needs to posteriorly tilt, but you cannot do that. You're stuck in anteversion, you're stuck in anterior tilt. So your body is compensating for that lack of range of motion through somewhere else, right, through somewhere else in wherever it can. There are a lot of joints that can move. It is going to compensate through some other joint. And so that is perception action. Your body is saying, okay, let's run this motor program, let's do this physical activity, but you also lack the range of motion to do that physical activity. So your body is kind of responding by making a compensation pattern, finding that range of motion somewhere else, either down the line or up the line of the joints that it has control of. When you do it again and again and again, another complex emergent outcome occurs, which is basically some kind of a chronic problem or an ache or strain, right? Because you have constantly been trying to compensate for the lack of range of motion that you probably have at the shoulder level or at the hip through somewhere else. And that is where we see aches and pains emerge either up or down the kinetic chain, either in the knees, in the ankles, in the spine, wherever else the body is kind of compensating from. So whenever things like these happen, that is when you need to build a solution model for postural rehabilitation. That is when a case for postural rehabilitation is warranted, but not otherwise. So when we do things this way, and this is kind of, the crux of the matter, this is how we can really individualize and model the problem around the individual person, right? You're only trying to solve an individual person's problem if they have one. We are not just straight up making a blank statement that every single person that has a rounded back needs to improve their posture. Every single posture problem is directly related to just having weak back muscles. This is very important to understand, because fundamentally when we do that, when we take one single box, we say that there is only one correct posture, and having bad posture simply means that you have weak muscles because of which you have that bad posture. Then we are drawing this one box, and then we are fitting all kinds of individual cases into it. Right? And when we talk about successful outcomes, right, what kind of a distribution of outcomes will we have when we only define success as a singular route for all kinds of different people? We'll have a distribution of outcomes where only 10% of this total people trying out that solution are going to successfully be able to reap some benefits out of it. They will have a successful outcome, and 90% people will suffer. And this is a meta concept that is basically, observable in a lot of different systems, in education system, all kinds of group classes. Everywhere where you gather a bunch of people and try to define all of their successes as one single thing, right? Money is the success for every single person. You always see a distribution of outcome where only 10% people are able to succeed and 90% people are not. This author, whose name I'm forgetting, calls this the star-shaped economy, where only a few percent people of the total people within that system are able to succeed and 90% people are suffering. If we want a very healthy distribution of outcomes, where a bell curve shape of distribution of outcomes, where maybe some people are not able to succeed, but a lot of people are able to succeed, and a lot of people are able to succeed really, really well. If we want to do that, we need to define multiple paths for success, right? We need to define individual paths for success. And individual paths for success in terms of posture can really be defined when you try to actually understand and apply first principles to every individual case. If you have a posture, you need to understand that your posture is a complex emergent outcome of your entire lifetime's worth of life experiences. It's not just about having weak back muscles. You need to figure out in what end of the range of motion are the different joints in your body oriented, right? What kind of an orientation does your body have? And you need to understand, can you move out of this orientation if you wanted to or no, right? And if you are not able to move out of this orientation, then what kind of problems are emerging as a result of that, right? What kind of activities are you doing in which it is required of you to hit certain ranges of motion, certain stances in the body that you're not able to because your body is stuck in this certain range of motion. And that is when you start the postural. Now, what is the simplest possible thing that you can do to bring the body back to the neutral baseline, so that it can start moving to both ends of the range of motion? What muscles need to be relaxed? What muscles need better contractile potential? So this is a process that you follow. And that is what you need to understand about posture. That is, I started this video thinking I'll do like a 1 minute 90-second thing on it, but of course this might have probably turned out to be like a 20-minute long video. But I feel like this is warranted. This discussion is absolutely required. This is important that we have this discussion, so that first of all, you understand how to define success for yourself in terms of posture, whether you even need postural rehabilitation or not, or whether it has been subliminally programmed into you to think that you need postural rehabilitation. And if you do need postural rehabilitation, then what is the totality of the scope of the solution that a fitness coach can actually provide you? Whether you're wasting money behind trying to just get your back muscles strengthened for no reason, just because somebody's told you that your posture has got to do with weak back muscles. And as a coach, it's important for you to also understand what is the scope of your practice. What can you actually offer your client, and when do you come into it as a solution within that process, right? So yeah, that's about it for today, and we'll be back for another video. So I'll see everyone for another one soon.